Wow, welcome everyone. Good morning and afternoon. Great to be with you. I wanted to set the scene for this conversation. For some time, experience management, XLAs have encouraged us to move sort of beyond traditional metrics, not just, is the system up or did we hit the SLA, but what's it like, for the person using it? And that was already, a big shift. Now AI comes into the picture and it moves the goalpost again because we're not just dealing with systems that respond anymore. We're dealing with systems that predict, that adapt, that make decisions, sometimes before a user even notices. And if AI is making decisions in ways people don't fully understand, now how do we then talk about trust or accountability? Now, that's really the space we're stepping into today. We've got a group of senior leaders who are right in the middle of this, working with XLAs, shaping experience, and plotting what that means in an AI-driven world. This isn't theoretical. This is happening right now. And what I'm hoping we can do is explore how these ideas evolves, what changes, what stays, and what we may have to rethink entirely. And with that, let's get into it. I'll ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and we'll start with Chris.
Hey,
Well,
great to be today. Hey, Martin. So I look after, I work in our growth and offering team at Kyndryl, and I'm driving how we can help clients drive a connected experience, leveraging AI and driving tangible outcomes for clients.
awesome. Thanks, Chris. Let's go over to Amin.
Hi, Martin. Hi, everyone. So my name is Amin Tabakoli. I'm the EMEA Managing Director of Digital Workplace at SCC. And I've been working with the XLA Institute for a couple of years now and very excited about this conversation about AI in the context of XLA.
Awesome. Good to be here with you, Amin and Chris. And third, let's bring in VJ.
Hey, guys, Vijay Guru. I'm one of the delivery directors in Unisys. I'm responsible for delivering services like experience management, even other enablement services across the globe for Unisys. So really excited to be here. Looking forward to the chat. We guys have had previous catch-up, so I know we are really passionate about this topic. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, VJ. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Amin. Thank you guys for being here. We'll get into it. So we have a number of questions, and then we hope to get questions, from the audience, so we can really, engage with you and make this as most valuable for you as you attend this. So the first question I'll pose to you, Chris, as we think about sort of AI and experience management. So the question is, where does AI most meaningfully change the definition of a good experience?
It's a great question, and put it simply, it's literally redefining what productivity is in the market. The consumer experiences we're having are literally pushing all the time of what we know is possible to be achieved, and therefore what we expect good to be and where we're heading with it in our work life is pushing the boundary all the time. But then, of course, there's a security reality, an environment reality to a business location, business environments. So therefore, it's a pressure and it's an opportunity. I think where we kind of see people on a journey at the moment is in three phases. One is like reimagining the delivery they have already, the service delivery in place. Then a second phase would be how can I reimagine service outcomes within that delivery, and then pushing beyond that into new business models, and the way that business outcomes are driven altogether. And to give you an example, one of our clients in the energy sector, we've actually put in place a truly conversational AI service request catalog, something that previously before wasn't able to be done, and it was actually a cumbersome process before that wasn't very practical in the field. People wearing protective clothing, trying to deal with the realities of working in the field and fixing pipes. They just couldn't get into that service request space easily, and it was a real distraction. Now with conversational AI, agentic orchestrating things in the background, using natural language processing to understand the intent of what they're doing, it's completely revolutionized what that outcome is, and it's driven a 30% reduction in effort from the users, and it's actually stopped a 50% escalation through to level 2 and increased satisfaction by 80%. So really simple example of a practical way that AI has reimagined what good is, but also enabled us to do something we couldn't do before.
Wow, that's an awesome example. Amin, what do you think about how AI meaningfully changes the definition?
I think if you think about the experience of the end users, AI complements that. I don't think that it necessarily changes the definition. But one of the things that I've heard from customers when we talk about AI, especially voice agents, chat agents, customers like to have a personal experience. And many times I've had that conversation with our customers about if you want to have a personalized experience, that's not necessarily meaning that you need to have an agent that's always working with you, is dedicated to you in your service desk and knows you, right? As long as anybody in the service desk understands you, they got the right metrics coming their way, and they have measures in place that can personalize the service based on what they know about the employees and your culture. Doesn't matter if it's a AI agent, it's a human agent. So I think personalization is one of the key aspects of AI. And it comes down to how much work you put in advance prior to delivering your service to the customer to understand them, create personas that maps it to who the employees are, and then how much you use that as a training set for your AI modules for agents to pick up and then tailor the experience. So personalization, I would say, probably one of the biggest impact areas.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I do see, on the screen, we got quite a few of our friends from Brazil joining. So it's great to be, that far spread around the world. And we know, experience management, has a warm heart in the Brazil, marketplace. Vijay, what do you think about, the meaningful change of the definition?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what kind of Chris and Amin were giving as examples. For me as well, it's not as much of the definition, but it's more of kind of the baseline is being reset almost. I think we spoke on this a few times. If we just look at last couple of years, the sheer speed of the new use cases or products which are leveraging AI has kind of increased that expectation from our user base, how they were using it, right? Things like Copilot, ChatGPT, which we use every day, that output, that speed, our services are expected to deliver in the kind of same pace. That it needs to be quick, contextual, and tailored. I mean, you were saying about personas, etc., right? Perfect. And this is where I think AI comes in, or that baseline needs to get reset.
Yeah, great. So, and I hear all three of you, it very much talks about, the boats are rising, the expectations are rising. There is real sort of progress in terms of creating a better experience using AI to support it. But when it comes to the definition of what good looks like, at the end of the day, it's still about, is that person, at its best, productive and being able to do their job, leave their footprints, whatever a company or an organization or individuals are after. That's still at the heart, the way of looking at it and managing experience. Do you guys agree?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome. So let's switch to the next question. And again, for the audience, if you guys want to throw in a question that you feel strongly about, or you just like to bring up, we have an expert crowd here that can help you with those questions. We love to take them and bring them around. So if AI could predict and prevent issues before users ever notice them, how should XLAs evolve? In that context. Maybe I'll start now with you, Amin.
I think ultimately with XLAs, we're looking at, the technology data, we're looking at the operational metrics, and we look at sentiment. But when we are designing and configuring XLAs, we always put more value and weighting behind the sentiment. If you think about the sentiment as one of the key metrics there that shapes the XLAs, as long as the sentiment is positive, and it's improving, right? That's what we care about. Now, less issues, less tickets if they're prevented, if you are proactive around it and apply fixes before they happen, or continuously just delivering improvements, without end users having to suffer in silence. Then ultimately, XLA captures that, right? So the technology data that we gather should look more healthy. SLAs or SLAs, but the sentiment ultimately might look better. And it's, I think a good experience is about less friction with IT, and preventative approaches with AI is going to deliver that. I think one of the other things that might be perhaps thinking about it as an evolution of XLA or as an overlay in the future on top of XLAs is what I call productivity level agreements, because a lot of these preventative, proactive approaches might lead into productivity loss avoided, which you want to report on. Companies care about it, employees might care about it. Doesn't necessarily is covered currently within XLAs, but it's a good concept to think about for future years, I guess, with more adoption of AI.
Yeah, no, great perspective, and we know that productivity is definitely, a big cornerstone of XLAs, XLA techniques. And the question hides a little bit of notion that XLAs are often sort of projected on sort of a support experience, solving of issues. That's where you often talk about, an experience, but the experience of the product over which that support happens is equally as critical. And I think that's what I heard you shout out as well, Amin. So Vijay, if you look at it from your lens perspective, what would you add?
Yeah, so this is where we always advocate around XLAs to be not set as forever. If you look at contact center world, average speed of answer, average handling time, abandonment rate, these are some SLA KPIs which probably when I started my career in IT, they're still the same. XLAs are supposed to be ever evolving, ever moving. You need to look at them in a short span of time, work with the customer because it needs to have that outcome impact. Once that is done, you move on. For us as well, similar to at Unisys as well, we kind of take a customer through a journey. Your all proactive fixes. We bring in the whole persona framework on top. Last year, we went beyond. We talked about the meeting room experience. I think where we are naturally, I think it needs to expand, covering the entire user journey at a company level, which might include other teams. This will include other tech. And this is where I think it needs to be from an evolution point of view, looking at everything at a company level, because when you improve things based on that, the entire user journey gets affected.
Yeah, awesome. Vijay, you talked about the conference room experience. Boy, I have some passionate history, and I saw Nevin is in the audience, and Nevin has some passionate history, when it comes to conference room experience. What's interesting about conference room experience to me is that a conference room experience should be about, whatever the host or the group of people were trying to do for which they needed that room. Were they able to achieve that the best way possible? Let's say you're a sales, you want to use a conference room to present an RFP. Did you win your RFP?
Yeah,
that's the ultimate goal of using that conference room, and everything under that sits under that and is only subordinate to that as an outcome. Go on.
I was going to say I can throw in a stat, and I think a study says on an average, and I think everyone can relate to, when you go in a meeting room, people lose about 8 minutes. Chris, I'm not sure what your experience has been, but these things are so common in terms of, hey, where is the cable? Have you plugged it in yet? Can you guys hear me? Literally. And this is like 8 minutes on an average of any meeting which goes away just because these things, when we have got so much data and technology, which can do these checks before anything starts.
Yeah. Yeah, and is that, it's one thing to talk about it in terms of loss of time, but does that salesperson still feels at their absolute best empowered to give the absolute best pitch, in that context, or does he or she feel sort of hindered and not as, on their A game anymore because they got so frustrated? There's a real meaningful outcome here. Chris, what do you think about, and you don't have to respond to conference room, experience, or if you like, you could. I think it's a great example of how XLAs work and how it relates to outcomes. And AI has a meaningful impact there too. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things to build on that the guy said that resonate for me. So what Vijay was saying around going broader and going across the whole enterprise systems, we talk about connected experience in Kyndryl. That's really what that means for us. It's connecting together those journeys across the infrastructure, user journeys, customer journeys, and really focusing on productivity. And something Amin said earlier around personalization, that's a key thing I think we can go into deeper. As we get more predictive and preventative in what we're doing, then we can focus more on the productivity, which means we can get more personalized in where we're going. And if we think ahead now to the fact we have AI agents out there, well, it won't be long until an employee can basically request an outcome. I'll request that the system I'm operating within will provision me an agent, and it will make me more productive at my own request. And therefore, what are we supporting now? We're supporting a user who has requested an agent that wants a new outcome. So I think the more you go deeper into this, it will evolve what an XLA is and how it works. And there's almost an abstraction coming between the foundational technology and then the productivity, the human experience and productivity on top. And that's where the XLAs will need to go, I think.
Yeah, no, great. And yeah, I see on the screen, Daryl Wilson, threw in a great comment. Golden 2 minutes. Well, you have an impatient workforce to work with, Daryl. 2 minutes is a really tall order, but I couldn't agree more. But imagine, that workforce, wants to do something important and needed visual video, and they default to audio only. How much are they set back because the technology just couldn't get it to work in the necessary 2-minute window, that they live by? It's just great how experience really matters, and ultimately AI will help accelerate delivery. So I think 2 minutes is a great target. AI will certainly help shorten the time, less people involved. You can imagine it can get quicker to resolution. But great discussion. Let's move on to the next question. And again, I look forward to more comments and questions from the audience. As we see more AI sort of help in the delivery, I think you talked about that, Chris, and maybe start this one with you, Vijay. We have the notion of AI being more prevalent in delivery, and therefore AI plays a more active role. And we've heard enough about trust as sort of a notion. So the question is, how do we maintain trust in experiences increasingly mediated or delivered by AI?
If done properly, it's not a new topic. I want to use this example because it's quite fresh. I was out of the country, just flown in this morning. Autopilot in planes. Trusted, is there for a while, almost to a point that it can take off and land the plane on its own. And it's proven, right? And it works. So if it's done with right checks and balances, I think it works. From a plane point of view, there are instruments, and that example, I was thinking of it as I was coming in. And these examples pretty much fits with our world as well. Why autopilot works and there is trust. There are instruments in there which are kind of showing what it's doing. Pilot has a capability of overriding it, so there is a human factor. And then you see there is a black box factor there, which is kind of holds the accountability. It's because it's kind of logging every action, who's taken it, etc. So for me, this is where the element of transparency comes in. And in AI world, I think this will bring trust. Anything where AI is used, I think it should be labeled. Now, if you are interacting in our personal life with any system, any company, etc., if you know you're talking to a bot or AI, your response and how you consume that information has got kind of two doors. One, there's a check from the company or product you are interacting, and then your own part, because you know you're talking to a bot, right? So there has to be, for me, that trust element will come when there is a fully documented view of why AI is being used, how it will be used, and that output result, how that will be shown or experienced from kind of user point of view. We are obviously, this is an XLA event. I'm also to a point that I think let's propose an XLA on based on transparency, which has a commitment that wherever there is a decision involved, which will have an impact on employees, it has to be explainable and reviewable from an XLA point of view. I think it should be based on that question. I'll work on it. I've just thought about it.
Oh, I think it's a great example. And I like the autopilot. I know autopilot is a heavily overutilized term in our industry by now. But the pilot's technology. Now, what's interesting about the example is that the pilot's always there. And you gave two great statements, Vijay. The pilot can always intervene, and he has enough instruments that he knows what's happening.
Yep.
And then we all trust that through that pilot, that that outcome is still done. So, is besides transparency, what's happening, and ability to intervene, do you think there are any other aspects to sort of creating trust?
I think maybe a kind of a wider consideration around AI, not just within the context of XLA, but I think with AI, you need to prepare for failure, and you need to set the expectation to your employees that there is a possibility of failure, and the trust is more towards. I think you gain trust by getting people to trust the process, that you're going to get it right, and you're going to have a feedback loop with them, and you're going to continuously work, not promising that things going to be perfect from day one, because we know it won't be. A lot of AI initiatives are experimental, right? So be prepared for that experiment. I used to work in a service desk myself, right? And the best thing I learned there was it doesn't matter how quickly you resolve a problem. It does matter, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the communication. And if you keep your client informed and make sure that they understand that you care about them and you're working towards a resolution, but it doesn't matter if rather than 10 minutes, you fix the issue in 2 hours when you do it right, right? I think with AI, trust should be with the teams who are delivering it, and they need to be listening and have to have that feedback loop. And also, it's a continuous improvement, right? So the trust is gained over time, and it's a matter of also people trusting the AI that they're using, and also IT trusting the AI to do more, right? But remember, one of the DEX vendors in one of their summits last year, they talked about zero trust vision. Can you do it? Maybe not right now, but you've got the capabilities to get there. It's a matter of how much trust IT puts into AI also to get to that direction. So it's trust of employees, trust of IT and organization all together over time, with a view of failure is going to happen. Plan for it.
I appreciate that. I mean, well, if you guys almost brought a disparate perspective, but on the same axis, and they're actually joined up. And I think there's something critical there, Chris, to dive into. So VJ talks about autopilot and trust and flying planes. Amin talks about expect failure, because it's not always going to be perfect. You put these two together, you imagine, expect failure for the pilot in your plane. Who wants to board that plane? So there is sort of this maturity state that I think we often talk about. I think VJ's example is bang on. I think that is sort of the expectation of future where we're at. But if you look at today's maturity, Amin is bang on. It's not there. I mean, who would want ChatGPT to fly our plane? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, OpenAI, but I would not quite yet. But we know it will get there by sort of just our sort of understanding of evolution. And when it comes to trust, the journey that we're on has to start with where Amin's point was, and has to go to where VJ's point was. So what do you think about that journey, Chris?
Yeah, and the beginning of that journey is important, isn't it? So, we talk about organizational change management, anything you're going to bring in, it starts with how you communicate your strategy and how are you thinking about people in what you're going to change here. So, we talk about job preservation strategy. Like, have you communicated this to your employees on what your intent is by bringing in AI? Have you thought about the ethics of any bias and how you're going to address that? Have you thought about personal information tracking, behavioral tracking? Can we consider sustainability? If you don't communicate what your position is on these things up front and how you're going to measure them, then you're leaving yourself open for a whole world of pain, of adoption challenges, or just confusion and resistance. So I think how you start is key. And this isn't something that's different, just talking about AI and XLAs. This is something that you should always do. But I think it's even more important than ever because the amount of splinter angles here of consideration that you need to bring into play. So you're not going to get that trust if you don't bring people to the table. And, you need to capture that perception and that feeling. And that means you need sentiment. And if you need sentiment, you need XLAs.
Yeah, awesome. So Jamie Rinken, I'm sorry, Jamie, if I butchered your name, commented, it needs to come from solid strategic goals and the company core values when vetting AI content. I think that's spot on, Jamie. I think there's a real important connection with what you're trying to do as a company and bring that together. And obviously, trust is a huge piece of your corporate culture and values, and bringing that. We also received a question from Valado, and the question is where it's being cut off on the screen. So I'll read it in full. We're seeing a lot of progress in using AI to collect and predict experience signals. We recognize that, but the real challenge seems to be operationalizing that into decision making. And I'll start again with you, Chris. From your perspective, how do you see AI evolving from measuring experience, i.e. XLAs, to actually driving autonomous or semi-autonomous decisions in service delivery and product design? Wow, this is an awesome question. Thank you for that question, Valado.
Yeah, and I suppose I would build on what I started to touch on earlier. If what is productivity for users starts to become they're requesting outcomes, I'm using AI agents to start changing what my productivity is and how I consume the world of work that I'm in, then you're moving into a world that is semi-autonomous in how you're delivering your productivity. And you're really going to have to start making sure that you're tracking that outcome at a different level. So we touched on it earlier between all of us around productivity and moving towards measuring things in a different way. But as it becomes more and more AI driven in what we're actually consuming, then we're going to start traversing more data points. We're going to traverse more systems and processes in one go. So it really starts to bring things together more across the enterprise in how we measure experience. And then when we start thinking about product design, well, it starts to blur the lines of maybe the traditional domains of enterprise IT that we thought about. Experience has always been a horizontal domain rather than vertical like IT, but this just brings it together even more so, I would say.
Vijay, having given a little bit of time to think about the question, I mean, it's an absolutely poignant question, and Chris obviously, very, very bang on with his response. What do you think about, the evolving the measuring and driving autonomous, semi-autonomous, service delivery and product design? I think the product design is a really, really tall ask, Valado.
Yeah, with any product design, and I'm sure people who are here today, everyone is investing in AI. The initial part, because the solution and the operationalizing is two different aspects. The solution part is you think about, hey, this is the AI, this is what it's going to do, and this is the output. But when you put it in the real system or in operations, there is a learning part. There is a bit of a curve it needs to do, the correction, the configuration, which is different because it's not one size fits all. For sure, and we're doing that with some of the investments we have made. This is where multiple data sources comes in for creating knowledge, and we've invested kind of different areas to kind of take it to the next level. But I think the main part from operation, putting it in live operations, is then having that expertise, those SMEs coming in, configuring and continuously improving it, bringing it to that standard, which actually improves experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do, as I have time to sort of reflect on the question myself, I do think that when it comes to product design, and I'll introduce an example, and then I'll look for your perspective, Amin. When you think of the example as like a PC, we are often digital workplace oriented. We see a lot of people in our field working in digital workplace. And imagine you are the product manager of a PC, and you obviously have a lot of telemetry around what's going on that computer, that laptop, if you like. And could you use more of that telemetry to ultimately semi-autonomously design what your next PC experience would look like? One of the things that you will be challenged by that train of thought is that part of what the needs are not represented through telemetry. I'll give an example. I once had it was in an organization where the salespeople, they wanted a shiny laptop. It sounds so trivial to most of us, but it is very real, because if you sit in front of a client and your laptop is not part of your representation to the client, you may not feel right. So that need would never come out of telemetry, but that need is very real because it makes that salesperson more successful. So there is a part of experience design and experience work that does require to literally interact and ask that person questions about what their needs are, and then you build from there. It isn't pure telemetry, but telemetry is a huge component of the answer nevertheless. If we look at desktop as an experience and the question, I do think there's some degree of autonomous service delivery that you could imagine, using AI, product design. Yeah, I see some challenges, but also not entirely impossible. What do you think?
I think digital workplace is a human-centric business, right? And products related to digital workplace consumed by humans, it has to be a human-centric design. So yes, telemetry goes so far. You need to understand other aspects of a human being, right? It's things like inclusivity, accessibility, preferences, digital literacy, a lot of other factors. How people like to work, how would they enjoy work, right? And some of those things, I think, when it comes to a service design or a product design, it's trivial to have the data, the intelligence that can perhaps make sense of that data in a way that humans might struggle a bit, but then take that and incorporate that into other things that about your consumer, your employees, your whomever is consuming your service or product, and then make that decision. So I wouldn't say human in the loop here. I would say humans leading the decision, getting inputs from AI. We may get to a point that we move away from that model. But personally, I think that when we're dealing with digital workplace, there is always that human-centric thinking that needs to be applied.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Amin. So, Valadao, as you see AI evolve in its own human centricity, because it's not impossible to imagine that it would. I think there is a path to get there, but I think that human centricity seems at today's state the hardest nut to crack for AI. It has to do with feelings, emotions, trust, all these things that are sit more in an anthropological frame, less sort of in a a very digital or binary frame. Maybe we move on to the next question, and I know I ended with you, Amin, but I'm going to start with you as my sort of randomizer of start. So as we see AI deliver sort of more experience components or experiences, does AI create the risk when we optimize measurable experience signals, or does AI risk optimizing measurable experience signals at the expense of real human satisfaction? Do we lose sight of what really matters here?
If what really matters, you're thinking about the people's experiences and the less disruptions they get, more productive they can be, and all that. I don't think that the XLAs, you can play with XLAs like that, because again, you always, this employee sentiment, what you're hearing from your employees, always carries the most weight. So I think AI certainly is going to have an impact on perhaps what we call T data, the technology data improvement, the score of technology. It can have impact on how you operationally run your services, and if you can improve that, things like if you can reduce your mean time to resolution, a lot of those key factors in the desk environment, as an example. But ultimately, AR or not, or whatever technology you're using, you check with them, people, is it working? Are you happy? Are you less disrupted? And the objective is also, in a service desk environment, always have, the best ticket is the one that's never get raised. Not that people are suffering in silence, but they're happy. They don't need to raise a ticket, right? And that leads into a sentiment. If AI moves to that direction to help with that vision, then absolutely yes. But ultimately, XLA is going to measure that.
Right. Yeah, I think this question actually ties great to Valadao's question. Vijay, it begs the question that if I take Valadao's question and our question together, do we run the risk that AI will game the XLA and basically start using and finding telemetry to make it all look very good, where the human at the end says, yeah, I'm not really sure what happened here, but I'm not happy anymore.
Yeah, as you were saying that watermelon came to my head. We have not mentioned watermelon, but I think in this conversation, we need to probably come up with a new watermelon structure for AI, the usage, technology, and the software. But I think that fits in. That fits because outside it could be the all the stats, etc. But inside, and I can think of an example. So we use a lot of tools similar to probably everyone who's on this call, where let me give a specific example. And we were looking at how do we simplify the incident journey, right? The whole objective there was quicker ticket closure, right? So we put the AI, started to look at the process optimization, it started to look at the bounces within the groups, etc. So started to work on that. But that's it. It created a lot of optimization, etc., but never considered the root cause because it doesn't have to. Yeah, but that's where the customer satisfaction or user satisfaction comes in. So numbers started to look good, but the end result there, if you don't fix the root cause, what's going to happen? It's going to come back, right? So for me, I think whenever we build this, it has to have that kind of direct connection, or those sort of numbers needs to be looked at. What's happening in the sentiment? What's happening in user engagement, employee engagement, etc. I think one without the other is incomplete.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Chris, what do you think about gaming the system?
Personally, 100% agree on the watermelon effect. It's the first word that came into my head too. So with VJ on that one,
yeah.
I think really it's as long as we go back to, as Amin was saying, the sentiment, the true sentiment of what we're trying to drive here, then you can't make this mistake and you can't fall into the watermelon trap. So actually, we already have the answer. We already have the answer here to what we need to do. And we know that from many studies over many decades from big consulting companies, there's a whole body of evidence from people like McKinsey that would say that you're going to get higher engagement when you get feedback from users. I think the top 3 reasons of why big transformations or changes fail is not getting feedback from customers and employees. So if you're not using that data, then you are putting yourself at risk of failure. And if we just think about the iteration and speed of AI, if you've got 20 to 30% better engaged employees because you have got their feedback, think how quick you can iterate with an engaged employee in AI. You're going to literally fall behind your competition if you don't do that. So all the evidence for many, many years has pointed to good OCM and good user feedback. XLAs include them. And if you don't, how are you going to keep up with people that are? Because they are going to get a more engaged employee thinking up in creative ways to work with AI to deliver more outcomes. So just don't make that mistake is really what I would say in this. Don't game the system, don't see it wrong.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think this is where XLAs, surpass and transcend this problem to the greatest extent. XLAs are, you said it too, VJ, you guys too, Amin. It is about, querying the person. Did they get what they need? Did we focus on the human, at play? And when you do, there's no gaming possible. Unless you could hypnotize, the audience, but we've not seen that happen. Let's move on to the next question. Oh, we have an audience question from Raphael. I'll start with you, Chris, if you wouldn't mind. So the question is, what are the specific XIs, experience indicators, we can build for AI, and how do they directly connect to business KPIs? Wow, yeah, that's a very thoughtful question, Chris. I'm sorry to start that off with you. I'll ramble on a little bit to give you time because that is a very tough question. So what do you think about XIs for AI?
So if we go down the premise that AI is going into your personal productivity, then you're going to have to go deeper into line of business and what you're delivering at a role level, to an individual level. So you're always going to have the sentiment. And we talk loosely in Kyndryl about 4 big domains of experience. If you simplify down everything you do across a managed service for a client, you provision and onboard things, you keep them productive. When they fall over, you support them and put them back up, and then you have ongoing change. So even with AI coming in, those things don't change. You still have to do all those things back. The use of AI within it will change, and then also the requests coming from the user of what they're trying to deliver as an outcome changes too. So it's good. We're going to obviously have digital employees that are going to come into the XIs here of how we're going to measure things. But ultimately, if it's about the business outcome, then you've got to focus and align that piece at the top, which means we're going to start going down into maybe customer journeys or specific business results that you can drive. And the great thing about AI from a results point of view is you are, with AI agents, is you can really track in detail what you have run and how it has affected things. One of the things we maybe have to do today more is aligning how the sentiment and feedback then relays back into business results. If we start having outcome-based contracts driven around AI agent processing, you can really start tracking in a more granular way and correlating those outcomes. So I think it just builds on top of what we have today, and going deeper into what digital employees can bring into that experience measurement.
Martin, I'll join few bits to that. I think from kind of business objective point of view, and depends where you start, right? Because I'm seeing number of customers where they are starting from the AI part and then fitting in the objectives, and then there are companies obviously who've got the objectives and then they bring in the technology to fit that. So I think even here, to answer to your question in practical terms, the way we work, again, there's not kind of one size which fits everyone, especially when you work in different customer environment. So this is where if you want to connect them to business KPIs, then it has to start from what are the objectives, right? Something could be, hey, I'm a product manufacturer. I have got a lot of IP. I don't want my guys who have got a lot of experience to go out and then I risk losing the IP I have, right? So this is retention. Okay, if that is the objective, break that down into what are the indicators which measures that, and this is where your AI connection starts to come in. You bring, okay, which of these parts, whether that's engagement just to capture that, or productivity, pretty normal. But again, I'm talking quite generic just to give a bit of framework how I would deal with it, which is your objective which you want to connect to. Break that down into the indicators you have available. These are the multiple data points in the system you have in place. Bundle 2 to 3 of them together. Have the engagement or the sentiment part either connected, or if can't be connected, view both of them together. And I think that here you will have a complete view on the AI, it's working and connecting to your business.
Yeah, great caller, great comments, Vijay, Chris. Amin, what do you think about the question?
While Vijay and Chris were responding to that, I read the question a few more times just to understand it a bit better. I think just listening to Chris and Vijay also, I think we talked about productivity. I wouldn't think about XLAs dedicated to AI. I would think about productivity indicators perhaps aligned to AI initiatives. And to the point regarding business KPIs, right? Yes, to Vijay's point, a lot of people think about AI, like throwing Copilot, see if that it sticks, and if people start using it. A lot of failures that you see in the AI world is because of that. It's not tied into a business outcome. But if you think about business KPIs, what is it that this corporate cares about? What are the departmental objectives? Translate that into people's objectives, and then see that how AI is going to complement that through productivity gain. That's probably the way I would think about it. But one of the things that I've heard quite a lot, as soon as we talk about productivity, and it's always been a bit fluffy, right? If you remember back in 2010, it was that BPOS, 2008, BPOS came about and then moved into 0365. There was a report about productivity gain of cloud published by Forrester. And there's like 20 pages of report, and you read through that, and you felt like, well, it was fluffy. I can't really put money value on productivity. I think we are getting there now. We can think of productivity, we can measure it, right? But do we have a baseline? So a lot of customers I talk to, they understand the value of productivity, but if I ask, how do you measure the productivity of this group of people, nurses, doctors? Some is well-defined, some is not. So baselining productivity, and then probably have productivity indicators on top of that would be the way to go. And then you still have the not traditional, but your XLAs on top of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the concept that I once saw develop in a team was a concept called time on task. And actually, if you have your system telemetry, like what was talked about in the question earlier, where you have all this telemetry that you collect, if you're smart about it, you can transpose this telemetry in a time on task view. So you can see how much time do people spend on a task. Now, don't use that to spy on people, but use it to aggregate and see, different audiences, different groups, how much time do they spend? How much time do doctors spend, in digital terminals versus helping patients? And I'm sure a hospital would care about that KPI, and I would care about it reducing that computer time so that the doctor spends more time helping patients. So when you think about time on task, to Amin's point, that's definitely a way of sort of elevating the discussion. I think to the question from the audience, I think Chris and Vijay, sorry, hit the nail on the head. It is not about AI as an experience by itself, because it is not something that people ask for by itself. They are asking, or they're trying to do something grander. And unfortunately, what we see a lot is that companies just throw AI in their environment because they feel they have to, because there's this worldwide rat race happening where everybody must do AI, and we just throw it in the environment. Where when you think about XIs, you have to start with, well, why are you trying to do something, and what is it that you're trying to achieve? And I use my sales team example. Frequently, you have a sales team that tries to sell whatever business they are responsible for. They want to spend less time in their CRM. So if in their CRM they have AI that can sort of summarize the current state of that client, that makes that salesperson more effective in doing their job. AI is a big component of delivering that outcome, but he or she didn't ask for AI. He or she asked for, get me out of CRM faster and better informed to help my client. That was the why in this example. So the XI straps to that why, not to the AI per se. And I think, Chris, that's what your comments, and Vijay, your comments were about as well. I think that's really super critical. But yeah, it is ultimately often about productivity. Well, we got another question from the audience. We're not going to get to our questions, gentlemen. Vijay, I'll start with you. What new failure modes does AI introduce into experience delivery, and how should XLAs account for them?
Good, great question in a way, because I don't think we talk about it enough. I think Chris mentioned about McKinsey earlier. I think I have a stat comes to my mind about, they put up a number that companies at the highest AI maturity can handle over 95% of service interaction. This is through AI or digital channels. Now just think about it. Look at the progress it has made. But the other side of it, that scale also means that even a small error rate affects thousands of employees. Right? This is where the crux of the question comes in, right? So from my point of view, this is from XLA point of view, the indicators needs to have a combination, or needs to be looked at from having confidence threshold, having a mechanism by design that when something fails, there is an escalation trigger. The human loop comes into place. Has to be a clear documented definition around the accountability of what is the part human needs to play and where is AI, and that stoppage go back to my kind of autopilot example, right? Having those indicators.
Yeah, great. It is about capturing trust in in the XLA to some extent.
Yeah.
And confidence is another great word to capture in XLAs. Chris, what do you think about failure modes, and how XLA should account or prevent that from occurring?
Sure, and agree with the fact that there's risks of going off track fast, isn't there, if we don't have a holistic enough measurement in what we're doing. But I think where I would maybe go slightly, just to kind of converse a different way, was there are moments, human moments, that carry really symbolic weight when you're dealing with people, and moments of complaint, perhaps, where you want to be treated fairly. There are moments where you really want that to come from a human, and so AI, from an experience delivery point of view, if we're really truly caring about the holistic overall, there are moments where you really want to have a human involved and almost elevate and preserve those important human moments. I read a really interesting article recently around the use of AI in higher education and on the student's journey through the enrollment and coming in and having assignments checked. There are moments they really want to speak to people and get real human feedback. And if you can elevate those moments and use an XLA to perhaps ensure that through sentiment capture, that those weighted moments that matter are human and still remain human, then we kind of preserve that too. So agree with what Vijay was saying, but I think there's also another dimension to kind of elevate to in this conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chris. And I see it in ChatGPT. I see it, this sort of fake empathy that it tries to conjure up, saying, "Oh, great job, Chris," and it gives its answer, and I get this sort of twitchy feeling like, no, this is just code. This is not right.
Right.
I mean, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think yes, one of the challenges we've seen is hallucination. It's you know, we recently went live with one of our clients with a new agentic AI solution we've embedded into our service desk, and during the testing phase before we went live, we saw hallucination, and we were trying to repeat that case and recreate it. Impossible, So it was just a one-off. Yeah, so a lot of hallucination, I think, to keep an eye on. I think the experience management office needs to keep an eye on these things. Is not everything is going to be captured through necessarily XLAs, but I think that feedback loop, especially in the first year of introducing AI, is quite important. I think thinking about biases as well. I was talking to CIO of one of our customers, a very large customers, and they started their AI journey 5 years ago, very early with agentic AI, and the CIO was telling me that their IT domain AI implementation was quite simple. It didn't pose a lot of issues. They within 3 months to 6 months they got it right. What took them much longer because of biases and because of importance of the topic was when they started rolling out AI into HR domain. Now the training data set that you use to create your SLMs or LLMs is quite important. How much testing you put in place to make sure that there is no bias, there is no. I mean, there was a comment earlier around the world regarding corporate values. That's quite important. Culturally, how well you're training that AI agent to interact on the human matters and the human resources capacity. It took him 8 months to a year to get that one right, and it never stopped. It was a continuous journey for them. So I think as he gets to more and more domains outside IT, into marketing, HR, finance, legal, it could be very tricky if you've got hallucination, if you've got things like that going on, and it impacts the trust. Earlier question that we had around trust as well, right? So yeah, it certainly has got challenges, and I think experience management office got a bigger role to play with some of these AI.
I appreciate that. Awesome. Chris, Vijay, I want to thank you guys for being here. This was an absolute great discussion. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. I want to thank you for being here. I know this takes time, and it's great that you made the time to be with us. I think, Nick, we had a QR code, or maybe we didn't. I don't recall. But if you like to learn more about XLA experience management, feel free to go to the XLA Institute website, XLA.institute, or use the QR code. You can learn there about just content. Through there, we can connect you with Vijay, Amin, or Chris. If you have interest in follow-up, you can also learn there about corporate membership and our maturity model to work with. You can also learn there about XLA Live, our upcoming live event in Amsterdam in June. A great place to connect with these gentlemen and many more experts in the experience management field. Just a great way to be connected and grow your knowledge further and get more out of it. And last but not least, also on the XLA Institute website, you can click on the State of XLA survey, which is our way of tracking how the world is doing in this context, so that we can play that back to all of you and tell you how everybody is doing and where people are. That's a great way of just barometerizing the world of experience management. With that, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next panel show. Thank you very much.